This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hi, my name is Scott Bellis. I played Max Fennig on The X-Files. And you're listening to the X-Cast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, as ever, Tony Black, and this week we're back on the Season 2 episode trail, and we're recording the 18th episode of Season 2, Fearful Symmetry. Invisible elephants, alien animal abductions. And joining me for this fantastic, and I'm using air quotes in case you can't see, this fantastic episode this week is my old podcasting buddy, Zach Moore. It's great to have you back on, Zach.
Hey, Tony, thanks for having me back. I really look forward to these one-off, just very, very not good episodes that it's becoming my niche here on the X-Cast, and it's always a lot of fun to talk about these, so I'm really looking forward to our discussion today.
Well, last time you came on, you sort of bucked that trend because we talked about blood, which I quite enjoy.
That's true. I guess, Shapes and the Jersey Devil were the ones I'm mainly thinking of.
Yeah.
Because the X-Files and animals does not mix, as clearly been established here. So,
and this is definitely becoming Zach's trend. That's true. I'd not really thought about this. Animals and X-Files not being a good combination, but your episodes are definitely proving this rule now. And
then you have Teso dos Bichos. Is that how you say it?
I'm going to go with that. Yeah, because I can't pronounce it.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
You could just go down the list, and it's not a good fit, guys.
No, it really isn't. We need to keep this as a trend, though, in that you're gonna do all the bad animal episodes. So we'll make this a thing. We'll make this a thing as we go through the years.
As long as I get to be on Babylon, that's in about 12 years when we get there. I want to reserve my spot.
Zach, I think I'm going to have like 12 people on that episode. You'll have 6 on one side, 6 on the other, and it'll just be a battle royale.
We need to have a 3-hour roundtable on Babylon.
Don't bet against it. Seriously, it could well happen. Before we talk about it, how's things going with you and your podcasting efforts? You're still hosting Standard Orbit on Trek FM, I believe, aren't you?
Yes. I'm co-hosting Standard Orbit with my friend Ken Tripp, and we're just having a lot of fun over there, talking about the original series of Star Trek. Also, we have, Standard Orbit talks about basically Captain Kirk's crew, so the old crew and the new crew. So basically anything going on with the Kelvin timeline that has become the new movies is what I'm trying to say. The J.J. Abrams timeline, we call it the J.J. verse for so long, and now J.J. Abrams is no longer directing those films, so they had to come up with a new name. So they invented the Kelvin timeline last year, talking about Star Trek Beyond moving forward. So it's a lot of great opportunities for discussion because you're talking about stuff that's 50 years old, you're talking about stuff that's coming out. So it's an exciting time to be a Star Trek fan. The 50th anniversary just came and went, and there's a new show coming up. We'll see how that all pans out. We're still waiting on Star Trek Discovery. So
a long wait.
Yeah. The Trek FM network's going great. And then, of course, I have Always Hold On to Smallville, which is my podcast where we talk about each and every episode of the Young Superman show that ran from 2001 to 2011 on the WB and the CW. I have to describe it that way because I'm programmed. That's when I introduce the podcast. Whenever I tell someone about what Always On the Smallville is about, I have to say it in that same way, in that same cadence. But yeah, we're wrapping. By the time this episode comes out, we should be wrapping up season 2 ourselves. So we're on similar paths here, Tony, as I always say.
We are brother and sister podcast, or brotherly podcast, sisterly podcast, whatever you want to go with. Yeah, we're on this journey together, this long road. Yours is even longer than ours so far.
That's right. Unless X-Files gets to season 11, we're tied currently on seasons, but more episodes, that's for sure.
And, by this point, we're recording a little bit in advance of this episode. By this point, season 11 might have been announced. Oh, hang on, what was that? Oh, no, there was a pig flying by. There we go. I just don't think
How many times have you said that on the podcast? I'd be like, oh, yeah, but I'm sure by the time you hear this, listeners, we'll know everything about season 11. I can't wait.
I'm nothing if not an optimist, but playing it back now, if anyone's listening to this as a run-through, which some people are, they're going to be thinking, this guy knows nothing. This guy is just the worst predictor of everything. It's true. So, yeah, before we move on and talk about the episode, reminder to everybody that if you're not already, you can follow us on the social medias, which I'm putting at the start as well as the end, because I just want to shamelessly self-promote everything. So remember, you can find us on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook, the Xcast, and that's our page. And we've also got our group, the Xcast podcast group, fan group, which you can find us. Loads of members in there, loads of chatter. Come and get involved, and don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes so we can get even more known. So that'd be lovely. And thank you to everyone who's done that so far. Anyway, on with the show. Let's talk about Fearful Symmetry. Fearful Symmetry is, as I say, the 18th episode of the second season of The X-Files. It first aired on February the 24th, 1995, was written by Steve DeJarnat and directed by James Whitmore Jr. The story sees Mulder and Scully investigating strange happenings around Fairfield Zoo in Idaho when an invisible elephant seems to appear after trampling to death a construction worker, leading to a mysterious case of possible alien animal abduction.
The construction worker who was killed had his spine crushed like a string of seashells, a circular abrasion on his torso and roughly the shape of an elephant's foot. Other workers at the site said they felt the ground shake, followed by a faint whiff of animal odor in the wind.
Mulder, if you're still suggesting that the elephant did this, it just defies logic. Somebody would have seen it.
Well, if somebody would have seen it, Scully, we wouldn't be here. Another vehicle would have left evidence of a collision, distress to the metal or paint. I can see signs of neither of those things. I'd be willing to admit the possibility of a tornado, but it's not really tornado season. I'd even be willing to entertain the notion of a black hole passing over the area or some cosmic anomaly, but it's not really black hole season either. If I was a betting man, I'd say that it was
an invisible elephant?
I saw David Copperfield make the Statue of Liberty disappear once.
And yes, that sounds as ludicrous.
Yeah, that about sums it up.
Sums it up. So, out of 10, Zach, what are you going to give Fearful Symmetry?
So, man, I don't think it's fair to give any episode a 0, because an episode was produced. So a 0 is if you don't turn in an assignment, right? So I think your base level worst episode, like your Babylons, right, are like a 1. Okay, there you go. There's my rating for that for Tell Me Yours Now. But I'm gonna give Fearful Symmetry a 1.5.
Whoa. That is officially, I'm sure that is officially our lowest rating yet on the Xcast. You've broken a record there.
This is one of the worst episodes of the entire show.
Yeah.
This is one of the worst episodes of the entire series for so many reasons, which we will get into. But yeah, 1.5. And the 0.5 is basically for the lone gunman. It was nice to see them.
Yeah.
And Mulder has some good cracks in this episode as well.
He does.
But man, what a terrible episode of the X-Files, Tony. What do you think?
I agree. I think I'd be slightly more generous and give it about a 2.5, because I think it's terrible. I do think it's terrible. I didn't find it any more entertaining than when I've previously watched it, and for some reason I've watched this probably about 3 or 4 times. I don't know why, but I have over the years. But I've hated it every single time. I think it's really poor, but it's not. It didn't make me angry. Now, the one this season that made me angry, which Brooker and I talked about a few weeks ago, was Excelsis Day. That one makes me angry because, well, as we talked about in the episode, Mulder doesn't believe in ghost rape. That one makes me angry because it's really, really insensitive. Whereas this one, it doesn't make me angry. It just bored me and bores me every time I watch it to death. And it is irritating. I mean, I find many of the characters in this, there's no apart from Mulder and Scully, obviously, there are no likable characters in this episode.
Well, it's very pretentious, though. Like, it thinks it's being so, like, important. And I had to double check and make sure Chris Carter didn't write this episode. Because it's just like, what kind of message are you trying to get across your episode? And it's just like, what is this even about? Like, what is your angle? Like, I just don't get it. And you seem so self-important about it. And that does annoy me. It does anger me that you think you're blowing our minds with some kind of new take on man, save man or whatever. We'll get into that. But anyway.
Yeah, it's trying to be really profound and it's just perfunctory. It was written by a writer called Steve DeJarnett, as I said, who only had one credit on the show.
No surprise there.
No surprise. It always tends to be the case, doesn't it? That whenever you get a really piss-poor episode, it's a writer who didn't appear again. It almost always, that's the case. This guy was a creative consultant on Series 2. He hasn't written much at all over the years. He wrote some Alfred Hitchcock Presents back in the day. He wrote one episode of American Gothic. He wrote one episode of Poltergeist: The Legacy from 1997.
Well, there's a TV show about Poltergeist.
Did you never heard of Poltergeist: The Legacy?
No.
Oh, Zach, look it up. It was poor. It wasn't good, but it was one of those late 90s TV shows where they, like Highlander, the series, which is objectively a bit shit. But
oh man, no, I love Highlander, man.
Oh, do you?
Duncan MacLeod. Duncan MacLeod is my Highlander.
I did.
I saw the TV show first. So that's why it has a special place in my heart,
There you go. Well, you see, there could be some people like that with Poltergeist: The Legacy. What am I saying? Yeah. Nobody cares about that show. But it did exist. American Gothic was quite good back in the day. That was quite interesting. But yeah, he's directed stuff, over the years. But there's no credits really from him since about 2005, 2006. So he's not a well-known face, and I'm not saying that people who, only wrote one episode, shouldn't ever be allowed again to write anything, but they never seem to get the feel of the show. And, crucially, we have to remember that Chris Carter ghost wrote a lot of scripts. He took a lot of scripts and he ended up putting his own stuff into them. So it could be some of the pretension, Zach, was a bit of Chris Carter. It's quite possible,
That's always my first suspicion when I get that from the X-Files. I'm like, okay, Chris Carter had a hand in this, I bet.
Yeah.
But
it's entirely possible, yeah. It's really up itself. And like you said, I don't really know what it's trying to say, except animals are wiser than you, mankind, and and you should listen to the animals when we abduct them and send them back pregnant, and then don't destroy yourselves.
Yeah, it's like, what is Day the Earth Stood Still or something? I don't understand. Like, what are you trying to achieve? I love animals, right? And so the whole angle of animals and zoos and circuses, I think that's an interesting point of conversation, and we can talk about that later as well because they kind of get into it. But if you're gonna say something about that, then actually say something about that. Don't wrap it into alien abductions and zoo behind the scenes drama of, hierarchy and power play of people who have, it's like, what's going on here? Invisible animals, it's just way too much going on. And maybe there's a couple of threads in here they could have taken out. And I think I've said this before about certain episodes that don't quite hit. They feel like they're trying to do too much and they end up doing nothing at all. By trying to just shove way too much in there. So there
was loads in this. I mean, for an episode that's so boring, there was a lot of stuff. and we will, as you say, we'll get into this a bit later. But yeah, it was crammed full of things. One of my notes is the fact that the first 10 or 15 minutes, it's just exposition, explain this. And I'm like, oh my God, just get on with the story.
There's some awful exposition in this.
Terrible exposition. It's the whole thing, what do they say? You should never work with children or animals, apparently. Although,
there it is.
Although, as co-producer JP Finn said that the elephant was great to work with. The elephant was called Bubbles.
Oh, Bubbles.
Bubbles. It's a great name for an elephant, isn't it? Bubbles the elephant.
He looked friendly, too. He looked really friendly. He looked like a friendly elephant. So
he did look friendly, yeah.
Too bad he died.
Well, yeah, really sad, really sad. I don't think Bubbles died in real life. Hopefully not. Hopefully Bubbles survived the episode.
Elephants have a long lifespan. Bubbles might still be with us. Who knows?
Yeah. They were worried that the elephant wouldn't run towards the truck in the teaser where it gets knocked down. But apparently the this is a great fact. The elephant really enjoyed the truck, and they had trouble getting the bubbles away from the truck.
Oh, I see. I see what you mean.
The elephant became quite attached to the truck, apparently. So, good old Bubbles. So, I think in this case, the maxim of not working with people should have applied to some of the actors cast, because they were awful. I mean, some of the casting in this is diabolical, I think. It's horrendous.
Yes. So like on every level, this episode is just inept.
Yes. In pretty much every level. It's just one of those episodes, and we always whenever we have a bad episode on the X-Cast, and thankfully, it's not that often. We don't always have bad episodes, because the X-Files has a good hit rate, and especially season 2. On the whole, season 2 is a really good season. But whenever we have a bad episode, it always comes back to, this would have been an okay idea on the page. You should never have written it. But whether this would have been a good idea on the page, I don't know, because it would have been like a whole 40-page treatment, given all the exposition in it, let alone a page.
Well, lots of stock footage of animals in cages, Yeah. Like, did they just come across a lot of footage they had access to of animals in cages, and okay, what can we do with this, guys? We have 20 minutes of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, in cages. Let's write a script around it.
Yeah, more than likely. This episode on IMDb has the lowest rating of season 2 by quite some margin. It has 6.5 out of 10, as it should. 6.5 out of 10 out of 2,221 votes.
What was Excelsis Day? I'm just out of curiosity.
Excelsis Day was 7.2. So that is, I mean, we commented that we felt that was a bit high for Excelsis Day as well. But, significantly higher than Fearful Symmetry. That's possibly one of the lowest ratings of the entire show.
No, I agree. No, this is totally a bottom 10 episode of the X-Files in my book. So.
It is. I think it is, anyway. I mean, unless there are episodes that are coming that are more heinous and hateful. This wasn't hateful. This was just annoying. But I think even really annoying deserves to be this low.
Yeah.
So, at least we can agree on how bad it is before we talk about it. In a great deal more detail. So,
all right, guys, buckle up for a fun conversation on
here
the
we go. Strap yourselves in as we go in depth on Fearful Symmetry. It starts all nice though, with a little bit of Latin dancing, with the two Latin guys who aren't all stereotypical as they clean.
No, not at all. Janitors listening to Latina music. It's just that's not. Oh my gosh, off to a great start. Although I will say, when you see janitors late at night on like a genre TV show, like nothing good can come of that, right?
Well, yeah. Although in the end they don't get killed, do they? I mean, I would have assumed
that was shocking. That was a shocking twist.
Yeah, they're like all that happens is their window explodes and they get a bit annoyed. It's like, oh, I suppose that's a decent little subversion in that you do imagine that they're going to be killed by some evil
like
force.
A monster's going to come out or something, right?
Yeah.
And the first minute of this episode, very effective, right? Because you hear the rumbling, the window crashes, they look outside, you see all these practical effects, like a car gets crushed, these lights are getting blown up, and it's like, wow, this is what's going on here? This is an intriguing mystery, and that lasts for about a minute and a half, right?
The teaser is probably. And when we were talking about the episode before recording in the podcast group, somebody commented that the cold open is very good. And, I think it's probably one of the better parts of the episode, if not the best part of the episode, this teaser. Because there's quite a lot that goes on. And, there's lots of different characters crop up, lots of different scenarios, whether the elephant's, tromping down the street or it's, killing the construction worker. And then, enjoying the truck, as I said earlier. But yeah, it does have a lot. It does have a lot going on. Did you spot the actor who in the teaser who would later go on to play more of an important X-Files character?
Was it the truck driver? That was a complete guess. No,
it was one of the Latino cleaners, Leno Britos, who would later play.
Wait! Did he become one in a chupacabra?
No, I can see why. Yeah, I can see because because he looks a little bit like that guy. But no, he went on to play Luis Cardinal, who was one of the assassins, the guy who shoots Skinner in the restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, and he spits on him, shoots him and spits on him. Lovely chap. Kills Melissa Scully as well, I think.
Maybe he was recruited by the syndicate after this incident.
Well, you know what? There is nothing to say he didn't.
Nothing to say he didn't. These people have to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
Secret origins of that character in this episode.
He used to be a janitor in Idaho.
Let's get the short story in the next X-Files anthology on this guy. I want to know. I want to know every point.
I tell you what, I'm going to write that. That's a brilliant story. The origin story of Luis Cardinal. It's got to be done. So yeah, and it obviously ends with the elephant Ganesha, as we later find out she's called, obviously dying after appearing in front of the truck. Invisible elephant, which is one of those, it's one of those concepts, isn't it, that you'd throw out. Let's do an animal episode. Weird animals. What? Think of a weird animal. What could? What about if an elephant was invisible? Ah, okay. What do we do with that then?
Yeah, and then it just kind of stopped there at that point. Because it was very intriguing, because it's like, the elephant just keeled over and died, and it was sad. There's like a kid looking at it, and it's like, this is sad. I'm interested to see where this episode goes, and there it went at that point.
Yeah. Although, I don't know about you, but did you not find the moment where Ganesha stops and looks at the trucker in the eye a little bit funny?
Yeah, I was like, is this supposed to be funny? Is it unintentionally funny? Like, I found it amusing. Like, are they trying to be like, look at the communication between man and animal? Or
this is it. Right? I was thinking, are they trying to be quite profound? This is one of the, again, one of those fair few moments where you go, are they trying to be quite profound? Because this is hilarious.
If this was a Darren Morgan episode, it would be intentionally funny to be laughing at it. But now you're like, I don't know. I think they're trying to say something here. I'm not sure. So
I think a Darren Morgan episode, the elephant would have telepathically spoken to the trucker and said something like, yes. What are you doing here? Like, get out of my way. But yeah, sadly, this episode isn't nearly as inventive. This is the thing. With these bad episodes, a little bit of a slight tweak, I think you could make them into good comedy episodes, but they're not self-aware or interesting enough to be funny, and that's the sad part, really. Well, intentionally funny, anyway.
Right.
So yeah, the elephant seems to be dying, or dies on the road, and then we get the credits. Point here: the name Fearful Symmetry. Do you have any ideas, Zach, where that name comes from as a title?
It is from something in literature. I know that.
You might want to narrow that down. It's like
it has been written before.
It's from it's from a poem called The Tiger, which was by William Blake, the well-known 18th century British poet, 18th and 19th century British poet, published in 1794, part of the Songs of Experience collection. Now, I don't know if you saw on the podcast group on Facebook, or it might have been on Twitter actually, but I have been requested by Carl Sweeney, one of the Xcast crew, to read out William Blake's poem in my dulcet Birmingham UK tones.
Oh, I did see that. That's how I knew it was from something before. I did see that. So are you going to indulge us, Tony? Enlighten us with your prose.
Zach, I apologise in advance for this, because this is probably going to be quite painful to listen to. But you will get to see where the title comes from. So here we go. This is my attempt at reading poetry on the Xcast, hopefully for the first and last time. Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Doesn't even rhyme, does it?
No.
It should have been fearful symmetry, but that wouldn't work.
Yeah, there you go.
I could try that again. What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Yeah. In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand, what dread feet? That is feet as, like, you stand on, not feet as in a feat of something. Just to point that out. What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp? Dare its deadly terrors clasp? ! When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he, who made the lamb, make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright, in the forests of the night, What in mortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry try? And there we go. Do you see any resonance there, Zach?
No, but what I do remember is there's an episode of Batman the Animated Series called Tiger, Tiger, and Batman quotes this poem at the end of it. So that's why I remember it. And that predates this episode, by the way. That's like 92, 93.
Wow.
Batman the Animated Series. Because it's an episode where there's like a mad scientist. It's kind of like a Island of Dr. Monroe situation. And so they kind of turn Catwoman into a cat, but then Batman like turns her back into a human. But there is an animal tiger hybrid somewhere in the jungle somewhere. And then at the end, Batman's like quoting this poem, and I mean, such highbrow stuff. That's why Batman the Animated Series is the greatest cartoon ever made. Because I mean, come on now, this is quote unquote for kids, but it's for everybody. We're quoting William Blake here on a Saturday morning cartoon. So that, and of course, they spell tiger with a Y. Is that how you're seeing it on your? Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, Batman the Animated Series made much better use of this poem than the X-Files, in my opinion, because I see no connection between what you just read in this episode. So.
Thing is, I mean, I don't like poetry, quite honestly. That's going to offend some people. I'm terribly sorry. I've never got on with poetry.
You're British, man. You're supposed to be cultured like that.
I know.
Like that stuff.
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, we're supposed to like poems, like Blake. I can't
drink your Earl Grey tea.
Make it so. I can't get into poetry. I've tried. I suffered through it at school. I don't have the brain for analysis in that way, unfortunately. So if there is, and I'm sure, they thought of some connection here. If there is some connection, I don't know it. So please feel free to enlighten me.
There's a tiger in the episode.
There is a
That is the only connection.
There is a tiger. And the fictional construction site where the tiger appears is called Blake Towers, named after William Blake. There you go.
Look at them.
So they're doing their nice little allusions to everything, but yeah, there you go. That's the origin of the title anyway. So onto the episode anyway. After the teaser, and we've got Mulder and Scully turning up to investigate, having a little chat with the Latino guys who've stopped dancing now to their Spanish music. Dun, 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 dun. And Mulder reckons it might be a sonic boom that has caused the window to smash. But Scully does. No, Scully reckons there might have been a sonic boom. That's it. And Mulder's there's a good line here, doesn't it, where he says, "I'd be willing to entertain a cosmic anomaly, but it's not black hole season either." Some nice little one-liners.
Yeah, it's not black hole season. Yeah, and then he says, he's like, "I saw David Copperfield make the Statue of Liberty disappear once." So he's got some good singers in this one.
Yeah, some good lines that thankfully, they make me chuckle these, but. Yeah, they're looking into. This is the point at the start of the episode, as I say, where there is a lot of exposition straight away. As soon as you get into the story, it seems like you're constantly for the next 10, 15 minutes meeting somebody and then having them explain their entire backstory. So first, it's Ed Meacham, who is one of those sort of characters who. I was thinking about this as I was watching it. We always seem to meet in the X-Files these kind of really sort of cod imperialist white old men who are trying to stop progress in some way and quite often facing off against nature. So, in things like Darkness Falls, you have a character who's just like Ed Meacham, who... You were on Darkness Falls with me, weren't you, Zach?
I was, yeah.
So it was
a good episode. A
good episode. I think the guy in there was Humphreys. I think his name was Humphreys.
Yeah, that sounds right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was the guy who ends up getting, killed. But he's the one who's trying to... He hates the foresters in that, the environmentalist guys.
Okay, hippies.
That whole kind of thing. Attitude. And in this case, Ed Meacham is that kind of old sort of game hunter imperialist trying to run Fairfield Zoo. So
they don't all talk and draw pictures.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you've got certain stock characters, I think, in this who kind of have appeared before in the show. And he's a good example of one. Another one like that is Kyle Lang, who is the animal rights guy. Who again, he's a bit like Titus Welliver in Darkness Falls, in that same kind of vein of this quite arrogant person who wants to protect nature, but he's going about it in quite strong terms. So they keep in certain of these episodes, they do keep repeating themselves, don't they, with these kind of tropes?
Yeah, and I guess that's why I might have thought again, I had to do a double take and see who wrote this episode. It wasn't Chris Carter, because it felt like, oh, okay, it reminded me of Darkness Falls. You're right. These kind of archetype characters of like, this is the corporate guy, and this is the nature first guy, and this is the sympathetic woman person, and just pretty like stock characters for sure.
Ed, of course, leads them to the character of Willa Ambrose, played by Jane Atkinson. This woman, she is the most annoying character I think I've ever seen on this show.
Really? I don't know, man. I mean, we got a lot of seasons to go, but so far, you might be right.
Oh, she just has always stuck in my mind, though, Zach, as being so self-righteous and self-important. She reminds. It's funny. I've been doing a Lost rewatch recently because I love Lost. Lost is my second favourite TV show of all time. X-Files obviously being my first. But she reminded me of Kate. That's that same sense of everything is about me. Everything is about my situation. Everything has to frame around in my terms. Oh my God, woe is me. Oh, my poor gorilla. Oh my.
So she's like Lana Lang from Smallville. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Lana Lang is another good example of a character who cannot see past their own nose, and it's just it's a genuine disservice to women. When they write women like this, because it does my head in. It really, really does. And Willa is a great example. Mm-hmm. Well, not a great example. She's a terrible example of that.
Well, her and Mitchum are kind of on opposite ends of the whole animal rights conversation. He's like the old school, put them in cages and tough love and all that, and shoot them if you have to. And she's like, oh, let's love and understand. And I think even Scully makes a point when Mitchum shows him the cage where they kept the elephants in. She's like, why such a small pen for such a large animal? And that kind of ties into the whole. I don't know. Did you ever see the documentary Blackfish?
I did.
So, I mean, that's a great documentary. Like, I legitimately teared up watching that, right? Because they talk about, like, how you take the baby orcas away from the parents and all that, and they're crying, like, oh, my gosh, this is terrible. And, that created some social change because it shed a light on, hey, look, sometimes maybe we shouldn't take these animals out of captivity and force them to perform in shows and stuff like that. So I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. Like, is it – because I used to think – this is kind of a tangent here, but I think it, it's as good as anything else in this stuff.
We usually do go on tangents in bad episodes. It's fine.
Well, back in the days, in the old days of like museums, if you go to these really old museums in these big cities like Chicago or New York, right, they have these galleries of dead taxidermized animals, right? So obviously people used to go out, they used to shoot the animal, and they used to put it on display in the museum so everybody could see them because you could see this animal. But then when zoos started to become bigger and more popular, that became more like the quote unquote more humane thing to do. Take them out of the wild, let them live, but let them live in this little cage. And it's like, guys, if you really take a step back, it might be more humane just to kill the one, right? And then it's dead, and then everyone can just kind of see it in a little slot in the museum. Then take like a whole family of tigers out of the wild and put them in like a cage. It's way too small and completely reduce their quality of life to zero. And I understand zoos today have really gotten a lot more, there's like more green in there, the habitat they spend a lot more money on, the presentation is a lot better for the guests, as well as, the quality of life for the animals. And there's really, people are a lot more aware that these animals aren't just objects, they're actually living creatures, right? And so I think that's great. Now, circuses and SeaWorld, that's like a whole nother conversation, right? Where you're making them perform for food and like that's a slippery slope, I feel. But anyway, my whole point is I think this is an interesting conversation to have. I don't know if the X-Files is the right venue to have it in.
Yeah.
But even so, like, I guess that's where these two characters are coming from. But that's a whole nother layer into all these other layers of conflict and exposition they're piling on here. And it really gets lost in the shuffle. And I guess to me, that's the one thing in this episode I gravitated to the most. And I wish, like, hey, we should have, like, talked about that some more. But again, the X-Files isn't really the place for that. Like, Mulder and Scully aren't the ones to, like, undercover, like, the cruelty towards animals at the zoo system in the United States. So anyway.
Well, it's true. It is interesting. It is an interesting conversation. I do agree, actually. And the episode does try and get into that a little bit. It does try and talk about that and set that up. But it never really pays it off properly. And also, as you say, the X-Files is supposed to be a TV show about incident and about plot and about exploring, obviously, the unknown, the paranormal, but exploring ideas around that. The good episodes do that. They can explore, I referred to it several times, but the conversation Brandon and I had in Aubrey about nature versus nurture, that was a natural thing that came out of a good script when the story was still all about what was going on with the characters and what was going on with the story and this genuine threat and everything. And the nature versus nurture was a byproduct. It was a good commentary through it. This episode might as well have a club to beat an animal with, which beats you over the head with, this is bad, this is good, this is what this means, this is what that means. And then you're sitting there for 20 minutes thinking, when is this story going to start? And
yes.
The only thing I did think was impressive was that at least it's one of those rare episodes where the episode doesn't begin with Mulder and Scully investigating someone having been killed by somebody else. There is a death, obviously, but it's ultimately a death by an animal that's been plonked in the wrong place by otherworldly forces, and a guy has died, by misadventure, effectively, by accident. So, it's different in that sense, in that Mulder and Scully are just trying to understand what happened to this guy. There isn't that they're hunting a monster, or that someone's been murdered, or, and that's nice, because that doesn't always happen. There is, when you have a standalone episode, usually there's someone has died in it, and there's usually a perpetrator in the traditional sense. But the problem is, immediately you get stuck into, as you said, all this different polemic and this conversation that doesn't fit the show. And it's even more apparent when we meet Kyle Lang, and at least Scully hates him straight away.
Yeah, just this guy pisses me off.
Yeah, that was great. It was a great line, because at that point, I literally said to the screen, you and me both, Scully. And he's the leader of the Wild Again organization, the WAO, as it's called, he wants all animals to be free, doesn't he? He's the extreme end of the conversation. Willow, I suppose, is sort of left of centre, but she's not as extreme as Kyle now, because she's looking after the gorilla. And then Ed is the other side of it, the one who wants to lock them up in cages, and then Kyle is the freedom, animals, I'm important, I want to release all the animals into the wild.
Yeah, played by the last Starfighter, by the way.
Lance Guest.
Yes.
I knew I'd seen him from somewhere, actually. Yeah.
Not one of his stronger roles.
No. Absolutely not.
I like Lance Guest, but not in this episode. The writing is not there very well, but his performance is pretty lame as well, to be fair. Like as you said, the guest stars just across the board are not very good in this episode, unfortunately. No. So
they're either miscast or, like you say, the script isn't there to make them sympathetic. And in reality, Kyle should, in a way, be one of those characters who you're aware is doing things in the wrong way, but you do sympathise with him and you do kind of like his ethics, but you don't like his... there's no point I sort of thought, this guy's quite cool, I appreciate what he's trying to do. All the way through, I thought, you're just a dick. You're just an absolute dick who's just, causing everyone problems, even Willa. And she, she's in this custody battle with the Malawian government about Sophie, the gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's tried to raise... She's become a surrogate mother to this gorilla. And again, you're supposed to care about that, but I never did. Throughout this episode, I never cared.
Even at the end, where it's like this. Ultimately, this episode is just a huge tragedy, especially for Ambrose, right? Because she's lost her career, she's lost what she valued most. She's lost a relationship with Kyle, as we learned, in the past. So she's hit rock bottom, and she's spoilers, charged with manslaughter for something we'll get into later. So I was like, you know what? I should feel bad for her, and intellectually I do, but emotionally, no, I don't at all. So it's ooh, bad. They did not connect all the emotional strings they needed to for any kind of true empathy for any of these characters.
Exactly, and there should have been that sense of, like you said, empathy is a good word for it. That sense that you not only want to get to the heart of the mystery, but you want to understand, you want to feel the connection. And Obviously, at this point, we've got so many things that have been presented to us. We've got the WAO, we've got Willow, we've got Ed, we've got the idea of the custody battle, we've got the gorilla, we've got the elephant, we've got...
And we're going to shut down the zoo. We're going to shut down the zoo.
We're going to shut down the zoo because it's like, oh my God. And then, UFOs. Let's just throw that in there as well. It's like, seriously? Seriously? But like you said before, at least we get the lone gunman.
Yeah, that's a great scene. And, there's no Langley here.
No, he's
but
not.
I guess, was the actor unavailable? Do you know, is there any kind of trivia behind that? Or
don't know that. I don't know for sure.
I thought it was a clever way, though, if he wasn't, if that truly was the case, because that's what I assumed. Okay, well, the actor's just not available.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, so they're doing a video conference and there's only two of them. And I said, oh, well, that's a really smart way to work around that, because he's like, oh, well, Langley doesn't want his image bounced around the world on a satellite. I said, oh, that's so Lone Gunman. Like, I really like that. Like, that totally fits.
He has philosophical issues about his image being bounced off a satellite. It's brilliant. This whole scene, I'm convinced this was written by, certainly if not by Carter, then by Morgan and Wong or somebody like that, because it's funny. There's lots of little lines. It's like when Frohickey says, Mulder says, this can't be the first time you're on camera, and he says, oh no, they caught me at the Free James Brown rally. And I love how Mulder laughs. There's a moment where the camera moves and Mulder is laughing, or David Duchovny is laughing, and it's so real, and it just shows their friendship. I thought that was a lovely little moment. It's great.
But ultimately, it's just another exposition dump, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the problem. At least it's those guys. But it's just, they come in, they say a couple of lines, they drop in the fact that it's a UFO hotspot and the animals can't conceive there in the zoo. And it's at this point, I really am just like, okay, all these balls are in the air. What are you going to do with it? Where does it go now? And it doesn't really go anywhere, does it? It just sort of circles the runway all the way through the rest of the episode. And by this point, I was bored. I mean, I don't know about you. I was sitting there thinking, can I watch Colony again? An Endgame, please.
This is the epitome of a filler episode. This is why we need 13 episode seasons. The United States, right?
Yes, because I think the fact that you've got the aliens in there, people would have sat up and gone, "Ooh, aliens," That's interesting. That adds a few extra wrinkles into it, but no. It really doesn't. It just helps propel the next side of the story.
Well, it's something that really annoyed me about Shapes. Is Scully's just complete, ignorance to what is going on, like intentionally so. Like in that scene where he turns to the world from the bathroom, like, oh, I don't know what happened. Somebody was in there and it must have been the cougar or whatever, right? That happens in this episode as well. Probably, gosh, like I rank these are like A and B of like her most ridiculous attempts at justification for incredible things, because as they're trying to discuss all this, like the Mulder's talking about all this and they're getting all these facts from everybody else, Scully is still not convinced like what happened the night before with the elephant, because Mulder's like, well, something weird happened here. It's like, well, Mulder, let's talk about it. The lights on the street are this kind of light, and it was dark, and maybe the security cameras didn't pick up the fact there was an elephant. I'm like, look, Scully, come on. There's something weird going on here. Like, stop trying to justify just the unbelievable through your scientific lens, because like she still just can't like wrap her head around the fact that it was an invisible elephant. She just refuses. Like when you're talking about like the camera might not have seen it because it was dark because the kind of light they used on the street, like that is just absurd. Listen to yourself, Scully. That's ridiculous. So that stuff just annoys me so much, because they try. I know it's a tough balance to get. Like Scully's the skeptic, Mulder's the believer, right? We gotta make sure she doesn't see too much or believe too much. But come on, listen to yourself. So that stuff annoys me a lot. Again, when you're like ahead of the characters and that kind of thing, like you're smarter than this, Scully. So when they write her that way, it's really annoying to me. Again, just adds to the annoyance of this episode. And those are the kind of conversations that are going on here. And in a good episode, in a good story, it's kind of moving along. You're like, okay, let Scully be Scully. But when nothing else is happening and you're just staring and dwelling on this stuff, that stuff really sticks out to you and really annoys you.
I was about to make that point, that it is always in the poorer episodes that it's much, much more noticeable. It's absolutely true. It's because they don't know what else to do with her quite often. They just assume she has to function as that alternate point of view to Mulder, even when it's blatantly obvious that Mulder's right. She has to come up with maybe it was a sonic boom, Mulder. Fucking sonic boom. Of course it's not a sonic boom.
It's like in Men in Black, where Will Smith tries to justify everything to like the crowd and when he shoots his gun when he shouldn't have, he's like, well, there was gas coming off Venus.
Yeah. Exactly. And it is unintentionally funny. Mm-hmm. But annoying, as you say. It's just sloppy and lazy. I did quite like, though, that Scully was the one who actually, after Mulder speaks to the gunman, Scully's the one who follows the activist guy into the zoo at night. She's the one doing the sneaking, the jumping over the railings and following him. It's usually Mulder doing that stuff, and then she turns up later when something terrible's happened. But it was actually Scully this time. following someone in the dead of night. That's new. That's different. But she still doesn't see enough that she should see. She still doesn't see the bright light zap the tiger out and, again, unintentionally, comically maul him to death.
yeah, because Last Starfighter has sent his henchmen to come release a tiger, I guess. And, again, huge continuity problem in this episode. So the animals, they get, the UFOs, they come, they abduct them, right? And then as repeated several times, they reappear miles and miles and miles away, like 40 miles away, right? That's what happens, right? And that like the elephant like was appeared wherever, like downtown, wherever it was, and then was marching back to the zoo or where going back to its home as it understood it, and that's why it caused that destruction, right? Okay, but here in this scene where the henchman gets killed, the tiger disappears and then immediately appears right outside its cage and kills the guy. That makes no sense. There's continuity. Pay attention, people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, unless if you're gonna, because that suggests that there's some element of whoever's controlling this, whatever alien force or whatever is pulling these animals out, that they're dropping them in specific places for a reason. Mm-hmm. If they're going to drop the tiger in front of the guy so he can be killed, then that's their influence dropping the tiger there and thinking, oh, okay, kill that guy. Whereas the other animals are appearing randomly. So yeah, you can't have one and the other. You have got to be consistent.
Yeah,
with
establish the rules of what's going on here and stick to them.
But it's just, mainly so there can be an actual death, another death that propels the story along. That's the only reason this really happens. And then, of course, you got Kyle having no emotion whatsoever that his friend has just been mauled to death.
Yeah, man, I can't tell you what he did. I mean, whoa, man, I don't know what his intentions were.
it must have been natural. At least Scully then turns around and says, "Oh, you're an idiot."
Yeah,
like that, and she's really angry with him, which is good. That is really good.
The video. So the henchman had a video camera with him, which I don't know what his plan was for that. If you're going to try to stealthily release animals, why are you going to bring a video camera with you? Maybe he was just there to document the treatment of animals, but he was going to release it. Didn't matter. But he drops that camera and it records the whole thing, right? And I thought, oh, this is going to be a big thing. Like they're going to watch this all together. Like, oh, look, the bright light and the whatever, and we're going to connect all the dots. But no, Mulder just comes in to Scully after they had this conversation that we were just talking about, and he's like, Scully, they looked at the tape and nothing mauled this man. It was like a phantom. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just go about their business. I'm like, that should be like a huge deal, right? Should that not be a big deal, especially for Scully?
Yeah. She go, what? Exactly. It's it's ignoring things for ignoring its sake. It's really, really annoying. Again, though, it's all continuing this thing. We're still in the point where there's exposition going on. Still. Even when we get to the point where we find out that Willa can communicate with Sophie the gorilla via sign language, which I don't know if can that be done? I mean, is that a thing? It can be done.
Sophie is basically an analog for Coco the gorilla. I'm not sure what zoo this gorilla is in, but she's a famous gorilla, and she communicates through sign language, and she knows a whole lot of words, and we can actually have a real conversation with her, and she's, I guess, kind of an animal celebrity here, at least in the United States. So this tracks. That's the most, I know it sounds outrageous, but it's actually one of the few believable things in this episode that a gorilla can communicate through sign language.
Okay, I can go with that, because I wasn't sure. I was thinking, is that possible? Is that possible? But Sophie now tells them about, Light afraid, and Mulder thinks that Sophie's pregnant, which leads us to the lovely squishy moment of an elephant autopsy, which has got to be the worst. You can imagine Scully being told, yeah, you need to autopsy an elephant. I'm sure she would have gone, oh, come on. Like, really? Do I have to get into the guts of an elephant, Mulder?
They have a literal, a chainsaw to get inside the elephant, and then they're standing in the elephant, cavity of its body, and it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Mulder, you get down here. You get some scrubs on down here. You should crazy idea. So.
Scully, I've got to go and talk to that guy. You remember that guy? I can't do it. Mulder,
where are you going?
Why am I always the one in the elephant? I'm not. I should be keeping a tally of this. I should be keeping a tally of the moments where Scully says to Mulder, well, "What are you going to do?" And he says something like, "I'm just going to go and see a man about a horse," or "I'm just going to go and see a bunch of animals," or something like that. And he just disappears.
I'm going to go talk to the animals.
Yeah, which was a good line.
So that was a good line.
It was a good line. So you've got this, and then they need to throw in something to forward the plot. So you get a tiger in the construction site. Mm-hmm. And you get, did you notice the horrendous bit of overacting by the two construction worker guys who were carrying the big, piece of metal, and one goes, hear that? And he goes, hear what? And then he literally goes, and he turns round like, it's so funny. You need to.
Man, he was a Dave. He was Dave Flair. This is his one shot. You know, he's going for the rafters with that performance. You know, all credit to him, man.
Glorious.
So it's hey, if you saw Tiger, what would you do, Tony?
I'd gasp in a really sort of jumpy way. Like, I'm not just go, but literally my whole body turn and go like that. It's just...
and then they go and hide in like the vent, right?
Yeah. I'll never forget him though. I'll say that for him. I'll never forget that guy.
He made an impression.
He did.
That is on his reel. I'm sure he got lots of other jobs because of that performance. So.
I hope so. I really do, actually. But yeah, now you've got Ed shooting the animal when Willa and Mulder and Scully turn up, and the animal's about to, get Willa. Ed shoots it dead, saves her life, and of course he's got issues with her, not just from a ideological standpoint, but she's his boss as well. So there is that element of sexism here.
And she's a woman, and he has a problem with that. Do we have to put that in here as well? Like, come on, we have enough at play here, guys. What is the conflict? Is because he felt he should have had her job, but she got it. Is because she's a woman and she's his boss. Is because he's an old school kind of animal, whatever animal treatment guy, and she's like a young school animal treatment. Like, what is the conflict? There's like 5 things going on here, and then there's the odd power play because he shows up first with a gun, and then they show up like, no, I'm your boss. Use a tranquilizer. Like, oh my gosh, why are we wasting time with this kind of stuff? But yeah, the irony, of course, is that Tiger would have killed her had he not shot it. So technically he's right. I mean,
yeah.
What are you trying to tell us, show? Like, whose side do you want us to be on? I don't know, but I do like his line about like, hey, look, they're not all friendly and talk sign language and draw pictures. So
yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
this is a dangerous animal.
It is a good point, and I did come away. I think that was what they were trying to. They were trying to be balanced. I think, weren't they? In some respects, they were trying to have the balance of there is only a certain point that you can domesticate these animals, and because ultimately, I think the writers behind this are liberal enough to believe in animal rights. I think the whole message of the story is that animals. That obviously what Ed zoo practices have been doing is barbaric, and it is bad, and chaining them up. But it's drawn in. There's very little sort of subtlety. It is all very either one way or the other.
Look at this video of this elephant being tortured. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, who is not going to disagree with that?
Exactly. You've either got to be a 19th century African colonialist, or you've got to be an activist douchebag like Kyle. You can't be anywhere else in this story. And when the reality is, most people would turn around and go, yeah, Ed's a dick because he's chaining the animals up, but Kyle's a dick because he's just overreacting to everything. Why don't we just, all be friends? It's just that whole thing of, it's extremes. It's really badly written extremes.
Who knew there was so much intricacy in behind the scenes of a zoo, power play and infrastructure, man?
In this one, it's full of egos. That's my problem with it. It's just full of people who are so self-obsessed that they can't see having conversations would sort everything out. Which is all part of the problem when the board withdraw their funding from Willa. So she's now going to lose her case against the Malawian government. They're going to take Sophie away from her. And then Mulder with his wonderful timing. She's just been told the zoo's going to close effectively. She's out of a job. She can't keep her gorilla. And then he goes, I think she might have been abducted by aliens.
And she laughs in his face, which I really like. Because that's a pretty realistic reaction at that point.
Yeah.
Like, are you serious? And he just deadpan looks at her.
And he's like, no. I love those moments when he'll just drop something like insane and he expects people to go with it and they turn around and go, what? What are you talking about? And he goes, no, I'm serious. Like, why would I not be?
Well, then he
tries the aliens.
Well, then he does his classic Mulder guessing and just complete extrapolation of what's going on, and he ends up being right. But he's like, well, maybe it's some kind of disturbance in the space-time continuum that causes the shift of them being returned and they're invisible. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, I was with you up to alien abduction, but then you're talking about space-time continuum and Noah's Ark, Like, Mulder, come on, one thing at a time. Eat the elephant one bite at a time, as they say.
You're so right. When he did say space-time continuum, I thought, what? Oh, come on. How have you got there? how have you possibly got there? I think the Noah's Ark thing, I think I can buy slightly more in the idea of, I mean, it is still a huge leap, but the idea of, you know, a benevolent, I can't even say it, a benevolent alien race coming down and...
A benevolent alien race.
Oh, we've reached maximum pun. Very good. Maximum wordplay. I like it. A benevolent alien race coming down and, you know, either inseminating these animals or taking DNA samples and things like that as a kind of, you know, as an ark, effectively, to preserve something that man is, you know, driving to extinction. He's you know, I like that idea, but it's just, it's so ham-fisted and it's wrapped up in a story where it almost feels like an add-on in a way, because you've got so much else going on. You know, like you say, with all the interplay and all the politics and all the other stuff, it just feels like, well, make your mind up on what you want this to be. Mm-hmm. And by this point, it's all the interplay, it's all the games. You know, Willer's going to Kyle and asking for help, and then somebody drops some boxes on him and kills him. And
yeah, well, like what? Like I thought last Starfighter, I thought he was going to be a bigger part of this episode. He's like in 2.5 scenes, and he gets killed off in like the most ridiculous, unintentionally comical way. Like,
but this is the thing. It's quite soap opera. This episode really does go into sort of soap opera territory. Well, yeah. It's fine that Willer and Kyle have a backstory.
Yeah, but they treat it like some kind of revelation. No, I have this. Yeah. This is the worst exposition I have ever seen in a TV show, because Scully, she comes up to Mulder, like I think they're investigating the crime scene after Kyle's been killed, and Scully comes up to Mulder, and she has this newspaper article with Ambrose and Kyle together, and she says, "I was looking for a pen to finish my report, and I looked in her desk, and I found this." That is terrible. Like, looking for a pen to finish your report, like that's how we're gonna go from point A to point B. Come on.
I know it was the mid-90s and they didn't have phones or, you know, stuff like that where they could just write that's poor. I forgot my pen, so I was looking everywhere for one, and look what I found. Yeah, it's
like, seriously, with these rankings of the episodes, like I try to mentally think, okay, we're starting at a 5 and we'll go up or down. Right? And for every one of these things that I just kept facepalming, you lose a point. And that's how we ended up at 1.5. Stuff like that.
Because it's just so sloppy. It's so sloppy, and it's a bit insulting. You know, it's that kind of weak storytelling that's just trying to constantly get from point A to point B to point C to point... You know, it really is an episode that is built on... It's that classic, it tells, it doesn't show half the time, this episode. It's just telling you things that you need to know that will allow the story to make an element of sense. And that's bad storytelling. All the exposition in this, all the things that are set up should not have been what it was about. It should have been the surrounding elements of a really interesting story about conservationism and, you know, benevolent aliens doing all these things. But it's not. It's about all this web of information, and you get lost in it to the point where you sit there thinking, I don't care. Take Sophie. I'm not bothered. You know, I should be bothered because it's an animal in captivity who's potentially being put in like a metal box, but I just don't care, and I should care. We should care when we get to the point where Ed's take it. Well, Willa says that Ed's killed Kyle.
I don't know who to believe at this point because we had heard Kyle get killed by like a cattle prod or some kind of taser. I thought it was a taser, but you know, after doing some investigation, Scully figures out it was a cattle prod. So obviously it wasn't just an accident or something, because she tries to play it off like, oh, it's just like last time, just like the tiger must have disappeared and come and killed him. I don't know, but obviously foul play is involved, and so we think that she had killed him. But then she's like, no, Ed did it. And they're like, you're all liars. I don't know who to trust. I don't know whose side to be on at this point. I'm just confused.
But exactly. Although I did think Willa is highly strong and emotional enough to do it. And I could buy her murdering him. Like, she is capable, I think, of going that extra step to protect this animal that she is obsessed with.
I agree.
Because she is obsessed. She's completely obsessed with Sophie. And unhealthily obsessed with a gorilla. And to protect her, I could buy it. So it doesn't surprise me that in the end we find out that she went to Ed Meacham to when she gets served and the funding goes. It doesn't surprise me that she goes to her ultimate enemy to help her. Because again, it's that web of, and like you say, not really knowing where, not in a good way, not twists in a good way. Just like, well, why would you do that? Why? Why is this? It's
just because it doesn't make it. Just because it was surprising doesn't make it a good twist.
Well, exactly. It's yeah, and of course now we get to the climax where you've got the aliens turning up. You've got Sophie's going a bit mad in her pen.
Yeah, because Mitchum has put Mulder in there because Mulder found him. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess he is the bad guy after all.
Evil white colonialist guy.
Yeah.
But then Mulder gets out because he's worried that Ed's gonna kill. Ed's gonna attack Sophie. Although he's trying to tranquilize Sophie because she's going crazy. She's banging herself against the door. Because she's terrified. She's talking about baby go flying in light. So she's worried the aliens are going to take the baby inside her. Although, with the aliens, one thing that did strike me, and again, it's me trying to tether things into some kind of continuity, but I did wonder, could this have been the same aliens who are the ultimate aliens in the show? The ultimate mythology aliens who are going to colonize the planet. Spoilers. Sorry, everyone who's watching alongside the podcast. Oops. Could they have taken these DNA samples to sort of protect animal kind? They're going to wipe out humanity, but I did wonder, maybe the colonizing aliens took these animals are taking these animals in order to protect these genetic samples for whatever reason.
Yeah, there are many alien races. Spoilers on the on the X-Files. So I don't know. I mean, this didn't really come into play from my memory. Later, like the cigarette smoking man doesn't talk about, we got Noah's Ark of animals, and we're gonna, we don't have any monologue about that down the road. So I don't know. I just kind of chalked it up to some other weird, alien race that like collecting animals. I don't know. It doesn't tie into the bigger mythology. But I mean, you could, like anything, you could probably make it work. Like any fan theory can be worked out with enough effort. So
you say this, but if season 11 does happen. He's probably run out of all the other ideas now, Chris Carter. Maybe we'll come back to this. Maybe season 11 will be the smoking man revealing, Mulder, we've got the Noah's Ark of...
It's Sophie's baby. Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't surprise me.
But why did they take why did they take Sophie there? I thought the zoo was where they took the animals from, right? But Sophie has been moved to some other facility. Am I right? At this point where Mulder finds Ed and her?
But this is the thing. This is where the inconsistency comes, because it suggests that the aliens are interfering in this. It's not random. That, like when they dump the tiger to kill the guy. Mm-hmm. In this case, they take Sophie after she signs to Mulder, and she's gone. It seems like there is some sort of influence there, but it is inconsistent. You're right. It doesn't make much sense. It's just so you can have a nice alien moment that Mulder sees and Scully doesn't.
Of course,
at the
end. Yep.
A standard, and it's, Sophie's gone anyway, and then later on, sadly, found dead, hit by a car miles away.
Yeah, but then Scully again though, they wake Mulder up, and he's like, "Oh, where's Sophie?" And Scully's like, "Oh, Ed must have took her." I'm like, "No, Scully, aliens took her." Like, wake up.
This is it. And it's it's obvious at this point, surely this is not the only, this is not the thing. It's frustrating. It is frustrating. But of course, Sophie signs to Mulder, man save man, which is what Willa later translates because he doesn't know exactly what she meant. He just signs it back to...
Was that not silly to see him try and sign? Like when... It just looks so ridiculous.
Yeah. You can do sign language, David. It's all good. Can I?
Yeah, no, it is. And again, like I was saying at the beginning, it is sad because, Sophie's all these animals are innocent. You don't want to see any animal get injured or die, especially when they're in environments they're not meant to be in. And then, Ambrose kind of breaks down and is crying, and you understand why she is. And again, intellectually, you feel sorry for her because she's lost her zoo, she's lost her ex-fiance, lover. I don't know what her and Kyle were. That was, again, very vague. She's lost her job, and she's going to be charged with manslaughter. Her and Ed are both going to be charged with manslaughter for the death of Kyle. So it's like, wow, this woman's whole life just fell apart over the course of this episode. Yeah. And it's like, oh well.
Oh dear. Anyway, next one. This is it. You don't care enough about her. It's a shame of what happens to Sophie and the animals. Absolutely, It really is, in a humane level. But you don't care about her. And so when she's going down with Ed, it's kind of, well, you've brought all this on yourself in a way. You really have. You've not helped yourself in the way you've gone about things. But it's got one of those sort of classic sort of weak endings, hasn't it? You know, there's like something like a minute long camera shot of Mulder and Scully just not talking in the car. as he's philosophizing over the top. And you're like, oh my God, this is when you don't know how to end an episode. Oh, let's just have a little Mulder moment and we'll get some footage. Yeah, just you driving.
When they do it with Scully and she's doing her case report, typing on the computer, it at least makes sense because I understand where this is coming from. You know, like, oh, she's writing her case report, and Agent Mulder believes this, but the evidence does not, whatever, right? But with Mulder, I'm like, what is this? Is this like again? I always relate it to Star Trek. Is this like a captain's log? Like, where is this, Mulder? Are you thinking this? Yeah. Are you writing this down somewhere? Is this a voiceover from another point in time? Like, I don't get this, and that's what they do to just kind of wrap up these episodes that just are way too muddled, and they just want to cleanly okay, we got 2 minutes left. Let's wrap it all up. So just keep Jillian, David, just look forward, drive in the car. Don't say anything.
You've clearly had enough of filming this episode because it's crap. Just don't say anything. It's nearly done. Just keep driving.
But then at the very end, Mulder says something about it's just a judgment of the alien race for our treatment. Like, whatever, Mulder. You're so pretentious. Just keep driving. And then we pan over and there's like a church and it's like, oh, man, and some kind of verse, I forget what it was, but it's supposed to tie it all together. I'm like, no, that was not earned. None of this profound epiphanies were earned at all, nor were they even present in the story you told us. Like, I don't get, again, I don't get what their angle was with this entire story. Like, yes, we know Mystery Animals is bad. Everyone agrees with that. Like, I don't know what you're trying to show us or teach us with this, pair. Because genres and sci-fi stories and all that, when you're supposed to take like some real world issue, put it through a lens, and we say, oh man, you know what? I never thought about it that way before. That's a good point. I'm going to reevaluate my point of view on this. Good job. Like, and not every story has to be that way, but that's what these kind of genre stories are best at, right? Yeah. And this didn't do that at all. It was just like, this mistreatment animals. There's some aliens. They're kidnapping them. They're making them pregnant. They're taking some babies. They got a Noah's Ark up there. This zoo situation didn't turn out too well. Some people are dead. Some people are going to jail. Again, way too much.
So much. Well, the Bible quote is it's this week's thought from Reverend Simon Bushman, who's sadly not a character. He might have made it more interesting. And it's, man has no preeminence above a beast, for all his vanity. And so that's the message ultimately it's trying to convey. They can't put it in. They can't make it work in the script. So let's just put it on a billboard at the end. This is what we mean. And at the end, I'm still like, well, what do you mean? What point are you trying to make? The aliens are trying to point out that we shouldn't slaughter animals. We shouldn't kill animals. Well, yeah.
so basically, guys, if you want the message of this episode told in a much more entertaining way and effective, watch Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Time travelers come and they take humpback whales, an endangered species, from the past to the future to ensure the survival of the human race and the planet Earth. So that's how you do it. Take notes. The X-Files.
And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's funny. It's sweet. It's charming. And it's really entertaining. Yeah. And it has a good message that makes sense. Definitely. Yeah. I love that film. I love that film to bits.
So it can be done. You can mesh sci-fi fun adventure genre stuff with actual social, like not even like parable stuff. Like, Star Trek's so famous for, look, he's black on one side and white on the other of his face, right? Oh, this is a parable of racism. This is literally like, hey guys, you're killing whales. They're endangered species. They're important to the ecosystem of this planet. Stop doing it.
Don't do it, yeah.
Or bad things are going to happen, right? I mean, they can be that blatant but still be that effective. So, I don't know. Maybe that's what they were trying to go for with this. I don't know, but they clearly failed.
Yeah, and the irony is that The X-Files is a show that's built on not trying to beat you over the head with ideas and putting ideas out there and making you think about things and having interesting, sociological things going on in the midst of a story about mystery and about the paranormal, about the unknown. But this is just all about the polemic. It is all about, this is good, this is bad, these are the two sides. This is, and at the end, you're just left with, well, fine. You didn't need to do an episode that is basically just an angry vent about, conservationism of animals. We get that it's bad. Tell a story. And that's what this episode never does. So, yeah, I think we've done pretty well managing to get through and talk about about all that without wanting to shoot ourselves or beg to get abducted by a flash of light. So, that's fearful Symmetry. We're never going to watch it again, are we?
Nope, we are not.
Never again.
Never again.
Never again.
Never
Which is a much
again.
better episode.
Yeah, much better episode of the X-Files.
Yeah, much better episode.
The motives of the silent visitors who set these events in motion remain unclear. Could this be a judgment on a global rate of extinction that has risen to 1,000 times its natural rate in this century? An act of alien conservation of animals we are driving hard toward oblivion? And if so, might it follow that our own fate and existence could finally be dependent on the conservatorship of an extraterrestrial race? Or, in the simple words of a creature whose own future is uncertain, will man save man?
So we don't have a quiz because making Zach watch this is pain enough. Testing him on it is just, I can't put him through that.
Well, and I did get full marks in my last X quiz, so I'm just going to...
You did.
Well, I'm ahead, I guess, so... I'll wait for
you-
the next challenge for me, Tony, but the X quiz, I have conquered the X quiz. I'm satisfied with that.
There's only one way to go now, and it's not a good way. So, it's just, you need to just cling on to your lead. You in the elite club of 5 stars, or 6. I forget how many questions I ask people. It's either 5 or 6.
Well,
I never
I
know.
answered 6.
I don't know what I'm doing.
For the record, I got 6 stars, so... And you were, and to be fair, for the listeners out there who are going to be particular, you were a little generous. I did have a couple of half answers you gave me full marks for. So, I'll admit it. But hey, you're the judge, and you said I got full marks, so I'm going to go with it, man.
I am.
So,
The judge's word is law.
There it is.
Yeah, this is true.
So let it
Enjoy
be
it.
written.
Enjoy the victory. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up there. So you'll be back relatively soon, Zach, actually on the show because you're coming to talk Dodd-Calm, aren't you? In a few weeks. Mm-hmm. Which will be an interesting one to get into. Mulder and Scully prematurely aging with brilliant makeup.
what is the general consensus on that episode? Do people like it? People not like it?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think generally it's not brilliantly thought of, but I always quite found it quite fun actually. Dodd-Calm. I think there's fun to be had in there.
Well, spoiler, I don't like it very much. So.
Okay. Well, that'll be interesting then. It's one of those episodes though that they should never ever have got out of. A bit like Darkness Falls actually. To mention that one again.
Right.
They should not have survived that. And in Dodd-Calm, there's no way really they should have survived.
No, unless you have a transporter. Again, I know I bring up Star Trek too much, but unless you have a transporter to run you through and rejuvenate you, that is not possible. But
it's not going to happen. No, exactly. It really does test the limits of suspension of disbelief.
But hey, it's better than Fearful Symmetry, guys. So that's what's important.
Yeah. Absolutely, definitely. So look forward to that in a few weeks. Until you do come back, Zach, do you want to give people all the links to where you're going to be so they can follow what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. So personally, you can find me on Twitter at MooreOnZach. That's MooreOnZach. Also the host of my own podcast, Always Sold on the Smallville, which is about, as I already said, the Young Superman show that ran from 2001 to 2011 on the WB and the CW. And you can find us on Twitter at Always Smallville with one S. And you can also find us on Facebook at Always Sold on the Smallville. And of course, I am a co-host of Standard Orbit, Trek FM's original series podcast. And you can find us on Twitter at Trek FM. That's TREKFM, and we're on Facebook as well. Just search Trek FM. So I am all over the place, man.
Yeah, you really are. You're prolific is not the word. I love both those shows. Obviously, Smallville is on a bit of a hiatus, but Standard Orbit is regularly queued up every week on my Pocket Casts. I always look forward to it. It's great. Any fan of Trek, whether you love the original series or not, actually, you'll enjoy what Zach and Ken are doing on that show. And Trek FM overall is a wonderful network of great podcasters, great shows. You need to go and check it out, guys, because it's just great.
Well, thanks, Tony. Really I appreciate that, man. It's always great to hear that feedback. As a fellow podcaster yourself, it's like, oh man, you guys like what we're doing. You have positive things to say. It's very encouraging. So yeah, please keep the encouragement coming, everyone. So
oh yeah, we'll do. Yeah, go and give them some encouragement, guys, because they work hard. They need it. So yeah, do check that out. we'll be back very soon for a brand new episode, which might be a Season 2 episode, might not be a Season 2 episode. We've got a few different irons in the fire, so look out for that. Until then, as I said earlier in the podcast, at the top of the podcast, you can find us on Twitter at the X_cast. You can find us on Facebook at the page, the XCast page, or the group, the XCast podcast fan group. So do come in and get involved. It's great fun in there. And if you could give us a star rating and a review on iTunes, that'd be amazing. Join the great folks who've already reviewed us on there, and that'd be lovely. So please do that. So we'll be back very soon. But until then, as ever, guys, remember the famous words: man save man. The XCast is produced and presented by Tony Black, part of the Black Hole Media podcast network. Title music is courtesy of Will A, who you can find on Twitter at IamWillAYE.